One day after getting my pilot's license, I looked around and I realized I am the only woman in this whole airport who has a hangar and who's flying regularly. And there's no young people. And I decided that I was going to do something about that.
Currently, 47% of women make up our U.S. workforce, yet only 5% of airline pilots are women, and only 2.6% of aviation maintenance technicians are women. Habitat for Aviation is working to combat those percentages by building a real airplane with a group of women and girls, where our youngest builder is 9 and our eldest is a grandmother. And together as a group, we are building a welcoming space for women from all walks of life to work together and learn from one another, young and old.
Hello and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Ulrich, and I'm also the co-founder actually, with my daughter of a giant positive news global website called The Goodness Exchange. It's been around for 13 years. All this time, we've just been sharing what's right with the world. Today, I am honored to introduce to you someone who embodies one of my favorite themes, which is this way that some people have in taking setbacks and turning them into resilient, whole new worlds of possibilities for themselves and others. Beth White is a Vermont native, an educator, an artist, a writer, a mentor, an aviatrix, which we're going to hear more about that word in a minute. And she's also a breast cancer survivor. And she's the founder of Habitat for Aviation, and one of the programs under it is called Women Build Planes. It's an initiative where she's bringing girls in from, I don't know, I think there's 8 or 9-year-olds there the other day building an airplane together. So Beth is here with us today. She survived and thrived after a grueling battle with breast cancer, and then took her knowledge and experience. She has a PhD in educational leadership from the University of Vermont. She took and also an incredible amount of history and experience in educational kind of big picture learning. She takes all that and starts this organization that is giving women a whole new landscape of possibility in aviation that's absolutely stunning. She's been nationally recognized now. PBS has picked up on her. She's in the middle of trying to raise a giant amount of money to expand this program wildly, which we are also going to hear about because she has also brought with her today Zoe Brosky. This is her media and administrative lead, and I've known Zoe for almost all her life through my dental practice. But Zoe is a force to reckon with as well. She has this passion. She has this ability to tell a story in videography and production that is also going to help them expand this thing wildly. And I thought my experience with Zoe is that she's a great storyteller herself, and she would add something to this interview that was extraordinary as well. So welcome to you both, Beth White and Zoe Brosky.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is just so good of you to find the time so early in the morning to come and visit us at the Goodness Exchange. We're going to start with Zoe because Zoe has it's her job to communicate the story of this project. And she's got a whole bunch of stats in front of her that I want you guys to hear right off so you can appreciate why we should care about programs like this and others who are out there trying new things, creating whole new landscapes for others. So Zoe, fill us in before Beth tells her story about, why should we care? What are some of the stats that you got?
Yeah, so thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Dr. Linda. So just very briefly to go over some statistics, currently 47% of women make up our U.S. workforce, yet only 5% of airline pilots are women, and only 2.6% of aviation maintenance technicians are women. So with that, as you can see, those numbers are very small percentages. Habitat for Aviation is working to combat those percentages by building a real airplane with a group of women and girls. And it's a multi-generational airplane build where our youngest builder is 9 and our eldest is a grandmother. And together as a group, we are building a real airplane. And a lot of us have never actually built anything before. Some of us hadn't even ripped duct tape before coming to this build. But it's a really welcoming space for women from all walks of life to come together and to work together and learn from one another, young and old.
Oh, that's perfect. That's a perfect way to summarize it. So, Beth, give us a little bit of your story, whatever's the high points, so that we can appreciate where you've come and where you're going.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here. About 7 years ago, I read this book called West with the Night, and it was a story about Beryl Markham. I don't know if you've read it. It's really remarkable. She's the first woman to fly across the Atlantic from England, and she was heading to New York City. And over Nova Scotia, her fuel lines froze, and she crash landed in a peat bog. And I did this painting of her, which is hanging behind me. And she survived. She took her plane apart, brought it back to England, and put it back together again. This is before air traffic control, before GPS. And I was like, gosh, if Beryl Markham can fly, why can't I fly?
All right. I do have to wedge in here.
Yes.
I've written an article on Beryl Markham. I've stood at the place in Nova Scotia where she crashed her plane.
Oh my
Just
goodness.
Recently, in the spring, a lot of the listeners, a lot of the podcast and our newsletter people know that my husband and I went on a long 5-week trip to Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, and we discovered that whole story. And so I'm going to create a link in this episode to the story I wrote about Beryl, and I have a video that I can send people to. I have not read West with the Night, but I got goosebumps right now. Just the video of her life story is unbelievable. It's like the number one video I recommend to people these days. And so anyway, that's so crazy. I didn't even know about your connection to that. I'm surprised we didn't stumble on that story. Or some conversation we had. Okay, so yes, and Beryl Markham was the first person, I think, to fly westward, which is the harder way. Not just the first woman. I think she was the very first person to make it.
There you go.
Right? Okay,
yeah,
so carry on.
She was really inspiring. And so I said to myself, if she can do this, why can't I? She was like a major expander for me. So the painting I did of Beryl is behind me now. And I was super inspired by her. So I took what's called a discovery flight, and it was in a little 4-seater airplane. And when I landed, Amelia Earhart once was quoted, "As soon as we left the ground, I knew I had to fly." Like I was on cloud 9. And I turned to my friend, because you're allowed to bring like one friend. And I said to her, "I'm going to call an airplane into my reality." And she didn't laugh, and she didn't say like, only, rich people have airplanes. She just said to me, "What color is it going to be?" And I said, "It's going to be green and white," without a beat. And then I took a couple lessons, and 6 months later, my mom got a phone call from my middle school math teacher's wife. And she said that she saw on social media that I had taken some flying lessons, and before her husband, Charlie, passed away, he had said to her, would Beth be interested in our airplane in our hangar? And so in exchange for helping Jane put a new roof on her barn, I inherited a little green and white Cessna 150. It's a little 2-seater airplane. And this hangar here at Franklin County State Airport. And it completely changed my life. I had an airplane before I had a pilot's license. Talk about like a major manifestation.
And a hangar.
And a hangar. So my life philosophy is I believe that we must uncover our purpose or our calling and refine that and cultivate that and share that with the world. And we are then manifesting things into our reality that will help us be the biggest, boldest, most badass version of ourselves that have ever been, because we're the only we on this planet, right? So I started flying. I got my pilot's license. And then one day I ran into this elder at the airport who said to me, you can fix your own airplane, right? And I said, really? But it's an airplane. And he said, pull it into my hangar. And that's when I met George Coy. And he's like the grandfather of Franklin County. And he helped me expand this notion of what's possible for me, which is I could marry my historical roots of working in the trades with my educational background. So I work for Big Picture Learning. We're a nonprofit organization that helps schools center youth and their interests in their learning. So the student is the curriculum and the community is the school. We kind of turn everything on its head. And so I started working alongside George. We believe in having powerful mentors who are experts in the fields of their passion and learning directly from them, through them, with them. And so I started working on my little airplane, Charlie. I started working on his airplane, and I came up to the airport so much that my phone was like 37 minutes and no traffic to Franklin County Airport. And so one day after getting my pilot's license, I looked around and I realized I am the only woman in this whole airport who has a hangar and who's flying regularly. And there's no young people. And I decided that I was going to do something about that. So I became the youth aviation coordinator for our local flying club chapter called Experimental Aircraft Association Chapter 613. And what the big picture philosophy is, one kid at a time. We started with one young person, and we got a scholarship for this young woman named Kyra Becker to get her private pilot license. And from then, we started growing our program. And like any good mentor, George said to me, Beth, you also need to keep flying and you need to get your next license, which is called the instrument license, which allows you to fly through the clouds. And so I studied really hard. I passed the written exam, which is extremely difficult. It's a lot of legalese. I started training. You have to wear these foggles, which like simulates flying through the clouds. And 2 weeks before my instrument check ride, I had a pretty major deviation. It was during COVID. It was 2021. And I had built a gazebo outside because, we were spending so much time outside and I wanted super high speed internet out there. So I rented a ditch witch. We put in high speed cable. And then I was yanking these cables through the crawl space of my basement and hooking it up to the router. And the next day I was like, oh, man, I think I pulled something in my armpit. And there was a little lump there. And after going to urgent care and one thing led to another, it was determined that I had invasive ductal breast cancer. And it was pretty advanced. It had spread all the way to my lymph nodes. And so like any life deviation, I had this new vector. So instead of getting my check ride, I ended up having to undergo 17 doctor's appointments in about 14 days. And it was determined that I would undergo 8 rounds of chemotherapy, a double mastectomy, 25 rounds of radiation, and then an oophorectomy. So it was a pretty major deviation. And those of you who may have known me before, I had this bright red hair and I had to cut it all off. And I had this hair cutting ceremony, and it was a small exchange for life. I took a lot of courage from Viktor Frankl. I think you all probably know of him. He is a logotherapist, psychologist, and he also survived the Holocaust. And he has this quote that I keep coming back to, which is, everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances and to choose one's own way. And so he said to bear any how, you have to have your why. And I believe that life happens for us, not to us. And so this deviation, this new vector that I was on, allowed me to say, who are the cool people that I'm going to meet in this journey? Who are doing cutting edge work in medicine? And it allowed somebody like me who's very much a giver to flip and be a receiver. It allowed people in my life to love me up. It allowed my aviation community to come through for me. And on the dark night in December, when I had to have this life-changing surgery, a double mastectomy, at 4 a.m, it was super dark, wet, cold December morning. I pulled into the hospital and there was a convoy of caring with 50 or more vehicles, led by a gigantic cement truck, all decked out in Christmas lights. It had a breast cancer pink flag, and it was SD Ireland's cement truck. And SD Ireland's family has donated millions of dollars to do breast cancer research and cancer research at the University of Vermont. And they led this convoy of my dad's contracting trucks. There were pink garbage trucks. There were pink oil tanker trucks. And they were all lined up and they were beaming love to me. And they're saying, we're with you. You're not alone. Even though it's COVID, we're here. We see you. We got your back. You can get through this. And
I just want to remind people that was during the depths of the pandemic. So
yes.
You were walking into this pretty much alone. Like you could only have maybe one or nobody
one person.
With you.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. What year was this?
This was in 2021, December of 2021.
We're still in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was able to bring one person in.
Wow.
And how do you choose between, right? And you can't pick one parent over another, right? Yeah. So I brought my dear beloved friend Romac, who was brave enough to come in and be with me during that journey. But all of these other people were with me in spirit. Amelia Earhart once said, the most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity, and you can do anything you decide to do. And that was during like the early 1900s. You know, she had this understanding of human capacity that wasn't limited by gender, right? And so after the surgery, after the radiation and another surgery, I won. I beat this. And during those super dark nights when you're all by yourself and you're recovering from chemotherapy, you ask yourself some pretty hard questions and you have some conversations with death. And one of the questions that kept coming forward for me is, what contribution am I going to make in this lifetime? What is going to be the epitaph on my grave? And I want to be known as the woman who made a difference. So I say to people and young people who I love working with, pick a problem, start solving it. And so many of our young people say, oh, Beth, I can't wait to be done with high school so I can start living. And as somebody who had such a close brush with death, I say, you're alive now. Pick a problem, start solving it. Find what makes your heart sing, cultivate that, share that with the world. And fast forward 10 months, the most difficult journey that I've ever had to endure. But you know what? We're built to do hard things. We're stronger than we think. George says to me, my mentor, who has been holding down the fort, he has kids flying, he has kids turning wrenches with him in the hangar. And he says to me, Beth, I'm turning 80 in November. How are we going to keep this going? And I said, George, I survived breast cancer. I got this. And so in October of 22, I formed a nonprofit called Habitat for Aviation because what I wanted to do was nourish this habitat so that it would create a sense of belonging, that people would find courage and inspiration. And even if they don't ever go into aviation, they've been able to tap into that, which makes their heart sing. And it was this like beautiful interwoven piece of my own passion, my history as like this entrepreneurial, generational Vermont, dairy farming, factory, working class family. I'm the only one in my family to go past 12th grade. And so it merged like the trades, working with your hands, loving to work with one's hands, with education, the educational background I had, and my work with big picture learning.
Unbelievable story, and so much packed in there. Thank you for articulating it just as you did. Because there's bits and pieces there for absolutely every situation in life, for every single person, man or woman, child, whatever. I'm watching Zoe's face. The audience won't be able to see that, but I'm sitting here thinking, I could cry. This is the energy that we all need to bring to something. Okay. So now what we've got is this little corner of Vermont, the Franklin County Airport, that has a whole bunch of hangars, but you inherited one and an airplane. The whole manifestation thing. I got to tell folks, Beth is not a spooky ooky person. We're not going to start going off into manifestation. But what I have discovered through all these conversations with innovators is that this manifesting things is really about focus. Where focus goes, energy flows. It just works that way. It worked that way in my dental office for 35 years. Everybody learned it. It was that if we focused on something, all the energy went that way and we got it done. And that is sort of where you're at. So
I love that frame.
Yeah, it really is just what happens for people. If we're in our sorriness, okay, then we're in our sorriness for a while, whatever time we need to have those chapters in life. But then when we kind of get started and decide what we're going to get done, you end up with something like you guys are sitting in the middle of now. Okay, so now we all know why we're here. Now we know that we're here to listen to what Beth did next. And then what's all come of this? And that, Zoe's got a lot to contribute to that. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to hear about how this all shook out and where it's going, because where it's going is a magical direction as well. So we'll take a break. You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time or maybe even the emotional stamina to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So, subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness. Okay, we took a little break for a day, actually, for a whole host of reasons, and we're back to finish this podcast episode, which I am so over the moon about already. I thank you so much, Beth, for sharing your story with us in the first half of this podcast, and Zoe for coming along for this ride. I mean, I'm sure that Beth's story is part of what inspires you, but you've got your own story. And I do want you to start us off a little bit about that, because Zoe and I know each other through my dental life, and I know that she comes from an aviation background, but she's got this really good point about that she wants to lay on us, because she didn't go to college for anything to do with aviation. Zoe, give us a bit of your story so we know how it might apply to our own.
So I grew up in Highgate, Vermont, and kind of Highgate and Swanton, which is right next to the airport. And it was a 10-minute drive to the airport, but I almost never made it over there my whole childhood. I drove past it every day to go to school, but never really stopped by. And my dad and my grandfather are both pilots. They were both in the Air Force and the Air Guard. And my dad, he flew KC-135 Stratotankers, and my grandpa flew F-16 Falcons, which I did ask them ahead of time to make sure I said those correctly. My whole life, I was surrounded by them and their aviation friends and all of their coworkers, but there was one thing that I noticed growing up, in that none of their coworkers or friends looked like me. And so I never really saw myself entering that field. It wasn't until I was 22 years old when I met Beth that I met the first female pilot ever in my life, which is a crazy thing to think about since I was surrounded by aviation my whole childhood.
Yeah, and I do want to just interrupt just a second to remind everyone that you've heard, if you listen to this podcast, if you read the thousands of articles about innovators and people who do interesting new things, they start over here. They almost never go straight. There's almost never a straight line. And Zoe's going to tell us about that. But here's the real kicker is you can't be what you can't see. It's ubiquitous through the journey of the Goodness Exchange is
Absolutely.
Almost all the innovators have some circuitous way that they wound up where they were because they couldn't see anybody like them doing what they ended up doing. They kind of had to stumble upon it like you. So you have a college background, but not in anything to do with aviation, right?
Yeah, because in my small town, I didn't do necessarily poorly in high school. So all the guidance counselors pushed the people who were doing all right to go to college. So I thought, okay, that is my path. And I always liked working with my hands and that sort of thing. But I never really figured out what I wanted to do, but I knew that, everyone else was going to college. I might as well jump on that bandwagon as well, which is a dangerous thing to jump on. And
Expensive.
So I got, yes, that too. And I ended up getting a degree in accounting, and I did that for a couple of years, and it just was not my cup of tea. And after college, I moved back home, and that was when I was introduced to Beth, because I was feeling a little lost and didn't know which direction I wanted to go in. And she told me she was starting this airplane build, and it was going to be like with a team of all women. And I was like, oh, that's so badass. I want to be a part of that.
Okay, wait, there's this little moment where you could have turned right, could have turned left. How did you meet Beth?
Actually, through my dad somehow, because he had heard that there was a cool lady doing cool stuff at the airport too, and he's like, "You should go talk to her and see what she's up to." So I did, and that was a really, really great choice. And the rest is history. I've been with Habitat for around 2 years now.
Wow, this is okay. So there are so many lessons in your story. I think it's the role of mentorship in this world is super important. I mean, Beth, I've met George. How old is George? 80 now? 80-something?
82.
80. Yeah, his birthday's in November.
Yeah.
So he'll be 82.
For someone in a man's man world of his generation to look at you and say, you can fix your own airplane, for gosh sakes, and you can do this and you can do that. that is a really special person on this planet. And we all have the power to be that special person for somebody, I believe. At least my life experience tells me that over and over again. Okay. So now you find Habitat for Aviation and it just lights you up. Tell us something, describe to us, Zoe, the atmosphere in this, because I could do it because I've been there for a day and my daughter goes every Sunday, but describe to us, and don't leave out the age range here.
I will not, because that is part of its magic. It truly is a really magical and welcoming place. Because you just walk in, and we have this uniform, which Beth actually goes out and hand dyes all of our overalls and all of our coveralls herself, and she makes them this beautiful shade of pink. So we're kind of known as the pink wave around the airport. And so anyways, you come in and you look around, everyone's in pink, but also everyone is working on a different aspect of the airplane. Because we are building a real airplane. It's a RANS S-21 Outbound. And right now we're working on the wings and we have finished the tail. It's not currently assembled together, but it's done and in pieces. And at some point soon, when we're finished the wings and the fuselage, we get to put it all together and it'll start looking like an airplane. But we're also taking our time to build this airplane because we're not in a rush. It's going to actually fly people. And so we want it to be safe. We want it to be done right. So everyone is having the chance to work on different parts of the airplane and learn every aspect of it. And we do have a real mechanic checking our work too. So we're not just guessing and hoping that it's right.
Right. And these are, and we includes some 8 and 9-year-old girls.
Yes. Yeah. Our youngest builder right now is Sammy, and she's 9. And our eldest builder is a granny. And it's such a wonderful, magical experience to have this multi-generational aspect to it because we all learn from each other. I learn from the young ones all the time. I think they know more about building the plane than me, honestly, because I mostly take the photos. But the granny is also so sweet because she has taken the time to help teach some of the younger girls how to drive. And this is like some connection that they would have never had without coming to the build. So we're building an airplane, but we're building the sense of community and belonging with one another. It's a really magical sisterhood.
I have also known her all my life through my dental practice. And she is an astonishing, remarkable example of this mindset of mentorship, this mindset of giving back, of finding what you're uniquely built to contribute. Oh, it's mind-blowing to see her interact with all the girls, because then you've got the age group that's like in high school tearing things up. I've never met a group of girls that had more sense of empowerment than those high school girls I met. Talk to us about them.
Yeah, it's something, I wish I had this type of program in high school too, because I definitely would have gone a different direction in terms of college. But it's sad in that Beth and I are both feeling a little empty nest syndrome because we just lost 4 girls going into aviation careers at college. And I was on the phone with one of them last night and they were so excited to be going off, and they're studying aerospace engineering and have a full ride to their school. And part of that, a lot of our girls have all of these different scholarships, and a large part of getting those was saying they were involved in a program like we have. But while they're here and they're with us, they have this lovely friendship and they hang out outside of the build and they go to different high schools. Some girls travel 2 hours one way to be at the build. So they never would have met each other without crossing paths at our airplane build.
So, okay, Beth, at this junction in young women's lives, you're changing the future. You're changing the future. I'm sorry, but I got goosebumps. You're changing the future for generations. I just got to remind people that if you're just changing one person's life when you do something, you are changing over the scope of time. You are changing the future. Period. End. Full stop. These girls' lives will be entirely different. They'll make entirely different choices. They'll meet entirely different people. They'll have an entirely different set of values and stick-to-itiveness and all this stuff. Talk to us about how that makes you feel when all these girls graduate and go on to these remarkable things that you arguably and I didn't have even any access to at their age.
Yeah. Well, Amelia Earhart said, some of us have great runways already built for us. And if you have one, take off. But if you don't have one, realize it's your responsibility to grab a shovel and build one for yourself and those who will follow after you. And, that really hit home when I found what makes my heart sing. And if I could just help others find what makes their heart sing, what their purpose is, and it doesn't have to be a singular thing. Painting makes my heart sing. Being with other people makes my heart sing. Working with my hands makes my heart sing. Helping those in the educational space reconceptualize this idea of teaching and learning, of making youth the center of their own curriculum, making them the curriculum. If I can help that, then I feel like I've made a difference in the world. And it cheers my heart. But it's not about me. We couldn't do it without this beloved community that we've created. Granny is our scholarship wrangler. I think we have this one young woman who applied for so many scholarships. Her entire first year is covered now, but because Granny was like beating the bushes, like looking for it. And she had the bandwidth and she had the interest and she had the passion, right? We have Auntie Bonnie, who stocks our shelves here at the hangar with books about women in aviation. And she comes and she tells us stories about the women Air Force service pilots, the WASPs, that she heard talk about their experience, flying B-17 bombers into Avenger Field and having the air traffic controller saying, "Hey, lady, get off the radio. I'm trying to land a B-17 bomber," and having her say back, "I am the B-17 bomber." And, just really expanding, like you said, you have to see to believe what's possible. We have a sticker that says, "See it, be it." It's not just about becoming an airplane mechanic. It's about talking to women who run the largest aircraft hardware company in the country, Genuine Aircraft Hardware.
Well,
right?
This is a partnership, this airplane build. Yeah, tell us about a couple of those partnerships that you've discovered through the women connections.
Yeah. We work with, obviously, Big Picture Learning, which all of the philosophy and underpinnings is built off of one student at a time, leaving to learn, having a powerful learning experience outside the classroom, things that you wouldn't learn from a textbook or a YouTube video, that are interpersonal, that are social. We work with the Harbor Freight Fellowship Initiative. So each young person who, after they work a certain number of hours, they get a scholarship. So what we're doing is we're elevating the respect for the trades. We're saying working with your hands matters. And George's son, Cliff, who is an airplane and power plant mechanic with authorization inspection, comes every single Sunday. He's at the airport all week working on airplanes, but he comes here every Sunday because he believes in what we're doing. He is building runways for us, right?
He also wears pink overalls.
He wears pink overalls. He puts on some cool tunes, right? And he also stays late. So anybody who really needs to talk about that challenging situation they have at home or some interpersonal thing, he's an ear. And he's become a valued confidant, as has Granny, as has Auntie Bonnie, as has Zoe, right? So it's just this, we call ourselves an aviation family, and it's really, really magical. It has interwoven magic and interconnectedness with EAA Chapter 613, with Big Picture Learning. We're a Be Unbound hub, where it's like, get out, be unbound, explore. And, even Zoe, yes, she's working in aviation, but she's following her passion of photography, videography. She's spreading her wings and experimenting with making videos that try to capture. It's one thing for us to tell you about it or to see it on a YouTube video, but to come here, as you have, Dr. Linda, like, it's just a beautiful space to be in.
Okay,
and you're surrounded by all of this.
This is the perfect place for us to load up a Zoe video. So I've asked Zoe to to try and capture some of that magic as close as you can, because it's almost impossible to believe when you walk in that pink door and there's parts of an airplane and there's people of women of all ages. Let's take a minute and watch this little video so you get an appreciation of what's going on in Habitat for Aviation.
At school, you're using rulers and pencils. Here, I'm using wrenches and rivet guns, and also, I'm learning to build an airplane here.
My name's Aubriana Mayette. I'm 17.
My name is Cheeto, but most people call me Ro. I'm 16, but I'll be 17 this November.
Hi, I'm Sammy, and I'm 9. My name is Axley, and I'm 10 years old.
I first came to Habitat for Aviation just as a visit. I was part of Miss Vermont during the time. Like, I got here and everyone was just so nice. And they're like, here's a drill bit, a drill gun, and a rivet. And I'm like, I don't even know how to drill straight. Like, you're kind of crazy thinking I'm just gonna start doing this. After the first rivet, I was hooked.
I met Beth, and we had a Clico race, and she said, hey, stop up on Sunday. And I came up, and everybody was so nice, and I loved it so much. I stayed forever.
I can do this and teach someone else how to do it. Like, it kind of blew my mind, and I'm able to teach someone something that I learned not even 2 weeks ago.
I came in here, and you guys were like, well, here's like a Clico, pull out a Clico. I didn't even know what a Clico was. I was staring at this thing in my hands like it was some sort of alien. But then I did it, I undid it, and I was like, wow. So I kept doing it, and now I was just Clicoing the whole way. People including me is kind of the best compliment I can get, because feeling like I'm in the part of the group, because I am, even though I'm really young, makes me feel good.
Being in the hangar, it's a lot of pink, first of all, which can be a little overwhelming sometimes, but then you come and you meet us and it's like, oh, like these are, one, it's girls who are very determined and passionate about what they're doing. Second, it's quite literally a family. I came in just like, hi, like I'm just here for an appearance, and it ended up being the girls surrounded by me that made me happy that this was gonna be my career. It's a sisterhood. I mean, you get mentors that are like your aunts, you get girls that are like your sisters. Then you've got Granny who is like willing to help you get your 40 hours for your driver's license. Not only is it a sisterhood, but it's a community. It's absolutely a place where you can learn how to build, how to fly, and how to fix. We're not only building an airplane, we're building a family.
It's a really supportive environment, and it's not bad to say, I have no idea what's going on. I know that you know how to do this, and you're gonna help me and you're gonna support me through it. And it really allows for people who want to get into this but don't necessarily know what's going on to get support. I mean, I keep coming back, so I think I like it here.
My confidence has grown a ton since I started. We spoke on the radio, we've spoken in front of people I don't even know. I've shaken hands with very, very famous people, and it's just amazing how many amazing things I get to do here. In school, I'm using scissors, pencils, cardboard even, for crafts. Here I'm using rivets, Clecos, drills. I don't use that in school. Aviation isn't just for guys. It's for anyone who wants to actually work hard and do it. Everyone who comes here belongs. It doesn't matter if you're bad at some things or are a little different than everyone else. If you can learn and you don't give up, if you're nice to everyone, have a good attitude, you're a part of the team.
My name is Clifford Coy. I am the AMP mentor for this group of women building this RANS S21 outbound. Why am I part of this program? I will be very self-centered in this. We're out of mechanics. We're really out of mechanics. It is ridiculous that we are not utilizing an entire sector of our population. I understand the challenges that a lot of women face coming into this, but I'm out of mechanics, and I want to help these people accomplish the passion that they want to envision for themselves. Places like this that do active engagement and outreach are definitely what we need in this industry to get more people to come in. Anytime you see someone kind of walk in and they're nervous about what's going on, and then we hand them a tool and we show them how to use it, and they do it for the first time, and they're like, wow. I think, were you here when Carly ran the pneumatic rivet gun for the first time? And she was like, give me another rivet. You can't pay for that. Like, that was just an amazing outburst of sheer unadulterated joy. It sounds really boring when you talk about it, but when you're actually doing it, and you're like, hey, I did this thing and I didn't break it. That's every time.
I'm Auntie Bonnie. I'm 75. I'm a retired librarian and aviation historian. Obviously, we're building on the past. During World War II, women went into building airplanes, tanks, boats, bombs. So they proved that with proper education, proper guidance, they could do anything men could do. But the amazing thing about this group is that it builds confidence. So even if you don't go into aviation, you are going to have confidence to do anything you want to do. This is the stepping stone. This is the blueprint for expanding this out of little old Vermont to the world.
So we're back from that lovely video that Zoe has created, and we understand the feeling of this place more, but I want to get people to the nuts and bolts of the future, because there's a big future here, and I want both Zoe and Beth to comment on some part of this vision of what's next. So whoever wants to go next, please take us into what's possible.
So we are calling into our reality a world-class facility that will enable us to do Habitat for Aviation every single day. Currently, we build on Sundays from 11 to 5, and we want to involve more folks. So the Women Build Planes project is just a tiny program within Habitat for Aviation, and our vision is to launch satellite campuses all over the United States. But first, we need a world-class facility for folks to come and get a grounding in our habitat of the magic that happens. So what we're calling into our reality is a place where people can learn and visit, and bring their ideas back home, or they could come here and spend a couple of years and get their training, whether it be their pilot's license or their aircraft mechanics license or an avionics specialty or a painting specialty. They could come here and it will be this most welcoming facility. You walk in, it's well lit. You look across this window into the conventional hangar where there will be airplanes, maybe a rotorcraft, helicopter. And then to the south, there will be an electric aviation dedicated facility to electric. So when I first came up with this idea early on, I had this crazy idea. I brought it to my dear friends, Kyle Clark and Katie Clark from Beta Technologies, which is an aerospace company based in Burlington, Vermont. And they are totally cutting edge, making the most amazing progress towards electrifying aviation. So they have this beautiful airplane called Aaliyah. And who else will be training folks on how to work on, maintain electric aircraft? So we will hopefully be one of the very first partners with Beta Technologies to train up the next generation of folks working on electric motors and servicing their airplane, which is called Aaliyah.
Wow. And I should tell people that this is one of the most exciting things happening in Vermont right now. Every single Vermonter knows about Beta, and everyone is very excited to see what the future brings with that angle on transportation, on commerce, on all the things.
On sustainability. And we're also trying to really cultivate what makes our habitat special, and that is creating the sense of belonging and community and connection. We also want to foster healthy relationships, healthy humans. We will have a commercial kitchen upstairs where everybody will have access to healthy food every day. We'll have Auntie Bonnie's library. We'll have breakout spaces for youth and adults to come together and study and have conversations and learn from one another. So to get to this next level, we're really trying to spread the word about what we're working on and call some aviation champions into our circle, whether they be pilots or airline CEOs. We want to reach out to celebrity influencers who embody empowerment. I'm thinking Taylor Swift and Angelina Jolie, who is a pilot herself. She went and became a pilot after her son expressed interest in aviation. And both of those women have connections to breast cancer. So if anybody knows those badass women, please tell them about Habitat for Aviation. We want to reach out to political and philanthropic allies like Melinda French Gates, Mackenzie Scott, Oprah Winfrey, Sheryl Sandberg, leaders who value like women who want to move the needle towards creating parity with men in the field. And that's one of the things that we're doing.
And you know, this kind of a podcast, this kind of a real conversation is landing on the right ears is what has to happen for that to go on. So, you know, I'm just not one of those podcasters that's constantly telling people to hit the subscribe button or like or share, all that stuff. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I did it. This time I'm going to. You share this podcast with anyone you think might have some connection to Beth's story, to Zoe's story, to this whole notion of a circuitous journey and finding what you're uniquely built to contribute. There's so many angles in this story that help people find their best lives. And that's how this episode and the knowledge of what Beth's doing lands in front of the right person or persons who can help her. And this whole thing blow open a whole new reality for so many people. So share it. Again, I almost never say that, but share it and you never know what yours this episode is going to land on. Okay. So Zoe, with all that said, I'm sure you're just chomping at the bit to make sure that we know some more nuts and bolts about the future.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in just a little bit more research, if you will, of why, kind of the other bigger why as to what this capital campaign will bring to the world and not just to Habitat. By 2027, it's anticipated that 1 in 4 aviation maintenance worker positions will be empty. That is due to a lot of folks in that industry being of retiring age. And that's just 2 years away. That's going to be a shortage of around 43 to 48,000 aviation maintenance workers. Even our beloved George, he'll never retire, but he's still at the hangar every day at almost 82 years old. And a lot of the folks who are also at the airport are not quite 82, but, nearing. And another interesting side of that is only 2.6% of aviation mechanics are women. That is such a small percentage. So the solution, potentially, could be why not fill that gap with all those folks who are leaving with women or young people that are now directed towards this industry. So we're trying to spread the word that this is even an option for folks, because most people don't even think, I want to be a mechanic someday, but they think maybe cars. No one necessarily thinks airplanes unless they were raised in an environment around them, or they spent any time around them before that.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that you have to have some thread of connection to aviation to even think of it as your path, or even, here's another thing, back to you can't be what you can't see. We see our doctor, we see our dentist, we see our accountant, we see our parents' best friend who's a veterinarian, whatever. There's lots of professions we see. But unless you have some connection to aviation, you just don't see it. I mean, you're flying in an airplane once in a while to go to vacation, but that's about most people's extent to it. And there's an enormous world of opportunity. I imagine there are great jobs in aviation for women who want to do both, raise families and have a major career in line, because there's probably so much flexibility with that kind of numbers. Let's just be hardcore about it. In 2 years with those kind of numbers, aviation, people who need workers are going to be saying yes to a lot of different things.
It's going to lead to fewer flights, more delays, and more cancellations, which is going to affect everyone who travels.
Yeah. So companies that need aviation workforce are going to be amenable to maybe the woman who wants to just work when her kids are at school, or the person who's getting their master's degree and just wants to work 2 days a week, or what have you, and so forth. Whereas there's a lot of inflexibility in the workforce when everything's hunky-dory. So that's just a practical Dr. Linda take on what I see is all this opportunity for young people. Okay, as you think forward, what is the really that you need some heroes to come into your world and help you with this capital campaign? What's the amount? What's the dollar amount?
Right now we're looking at around $20 million.
Okay. And for the opportunity, and I got to say, big picture, that sounds like a lot, folks, but if you could see this operation, I hope you get a feel for it in Zoe's video, but if you could see this building that they have, because you already have the building.
We do.
You picked up. I mean, it's already sitting there. It just needs to be finished. Yeah, they already have the property. Yes.
It's an empty cold storage warehouse that's sitting up at Franklin County. It's not getting used for much these days. And it's been stripped down to its bare bones, and we have had some lovely engineers from Beta volunteer their time and kind of design the building for us so we can get an idea of what it's going to look like. And Beth, if you want to talk about any of the other engineering things you've done to prep the building.
Yeah, we've done soil tests, we've done environmental tests, we have worked with the Vermont Agency of Transportation to figure out a taxi lane to the back, structural engineering to get a hangar door in the back, and things like that. But yeah, so we're very excited, and it's going to be a game changer. And to your point, Dr. Linda, I think Beta is on the cutting edge also of thinking about making the environment more welcoming for all folks. Mothers, fathers, they're having an on-site daycare facility. They do provide healthy lunch every day, a farm to table program. And so they, in a lot of sense, are expanders for us as well. We kind of know this in our bones, and we cultivate it here with our pink fridge in the hangar, and we eat around a table every single Sunday. We usually have some sort of lunch and learn where experts from the field are sharing their story, their journey, their circuitous route to get to where they are today. So I think it's really nice, this partnership, which is mostly a mentor partnership until Beta starts selling airplanes. They're not quite there yet. It's not a financial partnership, but they have been very mentor expanders for us. Katie is on our board, which is wonderful to have her perspective and her knowledge and her guidance. So yeah, we're very excited. Making good inroads.
I can't say enough to people about, I don't know how you check out a culture at Beta, but I can't say enough to people about how this company just lives and breathes the kind of values that most ordinary people just crave in their workplace. It's really top drawer, and it makes me think that anything's possible, to think that you guys have them in your corner. And of course, we want Beta to succeed, so they are, and they already are, a shining example of what's possible in a new world of business. I do a lot of public speaking about something called the gratitude economy. And I refer to Beta in in those talks that I give as an example. You don't have to be just the local little coffee shop or dentist office to work in the gratitude economy, to make everyone you come in contact feel grateful that you're in the world. You can be a big startup like them. You can be a corporation, but I always use them in my talks about the gratitude economy as an example of what's possible for everybody wins. Communities win, workers win, customers win. It's a good thing. So we're so glad that you have them in your corner. And that brings me to a topic that I really like to ask folks like you two, is that, the folks at Beta, I've met a lot of them for various reasons. And there's like this little air of courage around all those people, because they're stepping into a world that's completely new, and a landscape that we don't know much about what's going to come forward. We just have to have faith and keep moving. How about you guys? Like, is there some source of your original courage? Like, I'm describing, the family that has the family lore of the grandmother. I know someone who has a great-great-grandmother who crossed the United States in a covered wagon. I think she's 3 greats. And she buried 3 husbands along the way and wound up in San Francisco with 7 kids alone. Now, she had some courage, man. And I could give you other crazy stories. My own mom crossed the United States at age 10 by herself when she was orphaned, and her mother's sisters did not know that her dad had died as well. That's the source of my original courage. People might look at my dad and think, oh, he was that guy and so forth, but my original sense of what I'm capable of sort of comes from watching my mom. So tell me about original courage. Like, do you have somebody back there, Beth, who's just like a neighbor, an aunt, a parent? What do you got going on with courage?
That's a beautiful question. Thank you. I'm inspired by so many women who came before me and broke these barriers, many of whom are surrounding me right now in my paintings. I have Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary McLeod Bethune and Harriet Tubman's back there, as is Beryl and, Rosie. But being a tenacious Vermonter with like entrepreneurial spirit, I'd say like maybe we get it from the maple syrup, but I would say my original courage comes from my mom, Joanne White. She grew up on this dairy farm straddling Williston and St. George, Vermont, which is the smallest town in the state. It doesn't even have a zip code. It doesn't have any traffic lights or anything. She's the second generation U.S. born of parents who immigrated from Canada. She and her 2 sisters, I would say, worked harder on their farm than the hired hands. They were picking stones from dawn to dusk, even on school days. And she worked nonstop, and she brought me along on her journey when I was born. And I imagine the day I was born, I was this like bright redheaded baby, and the nurses, they put my hair in this bow on the top of my head, and she just, I felt like, adored me from day one. And she worked constantly raising neighborhood kids. She was canning. She was tapping over 100 maple trees, collecting the sap on her snow jet. I was sitting in like a milk crate in front of the snow jet, holding on to like the evaporator with my little hat and gloves. And we were collecting sap right before, my dad got home from his factory job, where he would boil the sap late into the night. And like, we hustled, we made it work. And she gave me freedom and my brothers freedom to pursue our passions. We were building forts. We were hauling wood. We were playing with Tonka trucks in the sand pile under the swing set. We were outside a lot. And she also celebrated my creativity. She framed and hung my artwork from when I was little. And I think that gave me such a strong sense of self, that and my tenacity, being a redhead, being different. Imagine my mom, she's smaller than me. It was like this little woman with a redhead and identical twins. I mean, she had it going on. And I learned from her hard work and resourcefulness and unconditional support. And I would say she would be the source of my original courage.
Lovely. Back to mentorship. I mean, you can't be it if you can't see it. I mean, you saw it over and over and over again, and now you are that in the lives of others. It's just the way it works, folks. How about you, Zoe?
I'd say the source of my original courage, I'm surrounded by so many lovely, lovely people in my life, but I think one of the most inspiring to me has been my grandmother, in that she had a really hard childhood and grew up in a really rough part of Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh. And her family life was very rough. And she had met my grandfather when they were 15 and they're high school sweethearts. And both of their parents did not like each other, as my grandmother's family was German and my grandfather's was Polish. So they weren't allowed to see each other for a moment, but they made it work. And she had my dad at 19. And so from then on, my grandfather had joined the Air Force, and she was kind of just left home to take care of the kid. And then she had another kid, but they needed money to support themselves. And she never got a college degree. She never went to school, but she went and got an interview at a bank, and she had no one to watch the kids. So she took both of them to her interview, and she got a job as a bank teller. And from there, she had spent her entire career in banking and worked her way all the way up to the top mortgage loan officer in Vermont by the time she retired. And at some point, she was making more money than my grandfather did as a Delta pilot who has a master's degree. And I just think that her story, she went through so much hardship to get to where she did. She made something of herself. She didn't come from much, but she made much for herself. And she's just nothing but inspiring to me. And
along the way, you can betcha a woman in that life trajectory inspired a whole bunch of people in her workplace, right? Somebody like that is just spreading seeds of possibility all along their way, which you would have no way of knowing. But think about the other lives that somebody like that touched. That's just a beautiful story. And I think I bring that up and I ask it to lots of my guests so that we all remember how we got here and how the future is counting on us to become that light in somebody else's life. We got to carry a lantern for something. Folks, I just really want you to know that anything's possible. My lived experience tells me that anything's possible. And then you just need to look for some folks to keep you going along the way. Just look, there's not almost a guest on this podcast that you couldn't dive into and learn something from. Okay, so to wrap up on that point, considering the state of our world right now, I hear that people are walking around knuckles dragging. It's really easy to be exposed to our current media landscape and think the world's going to hell in a handbasket. Okay. Right here, I'm here to tell you it's not. There's millions of people like Zoe and Beth out there, millions, who are doing amazing things in the world, and the world is just waiting for you, listener, to find what you're uniquely built to contribute. And people like Zoe and Beth have something that this crazy life experience they've had has taught them that might be a little pearl for us. So each of you take a turn at this question of what do you really wish people knew? When you look at the news and things are falling apart and you just go, I'm sure there's something that you say to yourself that keeps you going that like I really wish people knew what? Zoe, let's start with Zoe.
So I was reading this concept the other day that was kind of saying, wake up every day and look for reasons that today is going to be the best day of your life. And I've been doing that a little bit recently. And it can be small things. It doesn't have to be anything big. Like when I walk out to my car from my apartment, there's this one really beautiful flower that's right behind my car. It's not around any other cars. I think that it makes me special. But it's little things like that, like having a really good cup of coffee in the morning, like, oh, this is awesome. And just looking for small signs that the day is going to be a great day.
Yeah, that's a lovely, lovely practice. Absolutely. And I imagine it helps you do a little bit of what I was talking about. Like when you give your attention to something like you're describing, you're not giving your attention to other things, right? You're not.
Precisely.
Yeah. And some of those things are negative. So you leave that whole chapter out of your life when you're consciously managing what you give your attention to. That's absolutely lovely. How about you, Beth?
That is beautiful. And we do try to start each build day with a circle of gratitude, which is nice. I would say embrace your authentic self. And I've said it earlier in the podcast, you are the only you that has ever been or ever will be. So cultivating what makes your heart sing and sharing it. And there's this beautiful connection between making meaning and mattering. And that's where that comes from. And Mary Oliver famously said, this is your one wild and precious life. So as someone who's had a very serious conversation with death, I say, don't wait, pick a problem, start solving it. And during those hard moments, just remember we're stronger than we think. Sometimes our journeys can take us on these unexpected deviations that we never planned on making. I never planned on having to go through this life-changing breast cancer journey, but I decided to trust the process because more often than not, things wind up being okay. We discover who we are and we become closer aligned with making our hearts sing and life working out for our highest good, even though the ending might be a little different than what we were hoping for or what we had anticipated. Nobody ever did anything significant without it being a challenge, without upsetting an apple cart. And I think along that line, I would say that everyone will have an opinion. So the best piece of advice that keeps coming up for me lately is those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter. Just keep going.
Lovely. Well, you have been a fountain of great quotes that we can all hang on. I'm going to recommend that people listen to this episode at least twice. This is definitely, I've been doing this a long time now, folks. This is definitely one of those episodes where one of these two has set our minds to working and we might miss something that was said that was also important. And that happens in the really meaningful content that we stumble upon in our digital lives, as we can be sent in a new space in our mind and then not hear the next great thing we should have absorbed. So, okay. And that reminds me that we started this with your story about Beryl Markham and it was West into the Night, isn't it? Isn't that
West with the Night. Yes.
West with the Night. And the fact that I too was right there in the bog, the peat bog. I rode my bicycle to the peat bog where she crashed your airplane. That's just too highly coincidental. And it was so inspiring to my husband and I that we found an incredible documentary about Beryl Markham's life, which I'm going to share. Okay, so everybody should know that as we're wrapping up here, there's going to be a very extensive, lovely article with all kinds of links in it over on the Goodness Exchange to accompany this podcast. And it's not like your normal thing that you see on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You go to the Goodness Exchange. It's free for the world. Go to the podcast and find this interview there, and there'll be this wonderful article with links to everything that we mentioned and more. I'll link to the Beryl Markham documentary. Also, I'm going to link to an article or a wonderful podcast episode with Mary Oliver who you just mentioned. Oh, it's one of my very favorite on a podcast called On Being. So I'll give people a link to that as well, and other things, anything else we mentioned. Okay, well, this has been extraordinary. And local. Can I finish with that last little thought here too, guys? Almost everything beautiful starts somewhere that's local to somebody. Every big idea, if you guys see this thing out and you've got your $20 million project and you're just churning out new people in aviation, it started somewhere right here in Little Franklin County, Vermont. And that is happening in every single place on this planet. That's what I've learned, is that everything is local. So that's my last piece of wisdom for folks, is look for folks like Zoe and Beth right where you are and start there. I mean, even if you don't know what you're uniquely built to contribute yet, start somewhere, partnership, show up at a place that gives the kind of energy and service to others that these guys have been talking about, and you will be on the path to finding what you're uniquely built to contribute. Any last thoughts?
I will end with a Beryl Markham quote, which is, "A word grows to a thought to an idea to an act."
This is it. Okay, share this episode.
Cultivate your habitats.
Yes,
cultivate your habitat.
Yes. Okay, and share this episode with anybody you can so that this thing lands in front of the right people who will be amazingly thrilled to know more about this. Okay, folks, have a great week. I hope the things we talk about put a spring in your step, and you will keep being able to remember that it is still an amazing world. Thanks.